Okay, the IEC earlier this week defended its role in getting voters to the polls, saying that there was a myriad of issues that contributed to the low numbers. But is this turnout going to affect the credibility of the Commission? Well, eNCA elections analyst Joubert is joining me now to help answer this and other questions related to the Commission. Jan, welcome back. Good afternoon again. Thank you very much for still being with us. While we are building up, we are waiting. I mean, we're about 3 o'clock now, another 3 hours to go, plus minus, before the IEC announces at 6 o'clock the results. We're beginning to look at the numbers. There will be no new numbers currently, and that board will begin to move later on. That is my assertion. But there is an important issue. The low voter turnout is a fact. It happened. The IEC's role is to make sure that people are given the resources and participate in elections. There was a voter registration weekend that happened, but the whole thing was done a little bit too late because there was that court matter before. So is the IEC, or can the IEC be entirely to be blamed for the low voter turnout?
Not for the low voter turnout. I think that the pandemic played a role, the fact that there was uncertainty about the date and all those sorts of things. Also, like the poor performance of some parties in government, and that's not only one party, several have been in trouble. So people are a bit distrustful of the process at the moment. Can I really make a change by voting? That's not the IEC's fault. But what's bothersome about this election is the fact that many of the problems that were experienced in where the IEC does have a mandate, and you were just talking about what that mandate is, that there were many problems entirely of the IEC's own making.
Which, can you give us some examples?
Well, this new machine that they were using, they can defend it.
Many people were complaining about that, many parties afterwards.
Well, you're looking at one of them, because my own vote, and I see that I have in common with the CIC of the EFF. Who knew that we had that in common, that we were both held up by the inability
because of the device. What was the problem? Was it the device? Was it the inability of using the device? Were the people not properly trained? Because it's a new device.
Yes, look, I don't know the device either. And quite frankly, if you had my technological capabilities, which are zero, then I would be the last person to ask. So I hope that's going to be investigated. But what I saw with my own eyes was that there was, for some reason, an inability, whether it be the device, it's late in the day, whether it be the device or the people who had to operate it, somewhere there was a problem. And if you are a voter, it doesn't matter to you whether it was there. Previously, when the device was not there, voting went more smoothly. Now the device is there and it doesn't. Whether they trained their people poorly, whether their devices didn't work well, it's one of the two.
Okay, so this device issue could undermine the credibility of the IEC. How significant could it impact, how material could it impact on the outcome of some of these municipality results?
No, I think the issue is broader and deeper than that. It is whether there's trust in the electoral process. The very democracy hinges on it. Now, the IEC, of course, did its own research. I'm not sure of the methodology, but they acclaimed and proclaimed that 90% of people who voted were happy with the process. I don't know how they located those people, but it's 90% of 42%. Remember, only 42% voted. So that's not an exceedingly high figure. The thing here is, I take no joy in this, and I wish it wasn't so, because our democracy hinges on the process being trusted by the people.
Yeah, I saw a research that the IEC was referring to that was been done by the Human Science Research Council. I think they were helping them. Maybe that's it. But still, 90% of those who participated is still a high enough a percentage. But how significant is that fact anyway, in terms of reassuring me and you and other voters that the process is robust?
You're quite right. It is the HSRC. It was announced there at the Electoral Results Centre. You're quite right. The point here is that is a lovely finding for the IEC. And if that is so, then clearly there's no problem. It's wonderful. Everything's good. Every other research has shown that generally amongst the general public, not the people who have just voted, the general public, the trust in the IEC has slipped from a high of 90% not very many years ago to somewhere approaching 60% by this year.
Yeah, that decline is not good, because when it was at 90%, it was even a point of reference for other African countries when they were going to their elections. They came to the IEC.
Yes, and I just wish and hope that the IEC rectifies whatever problem exists, whether it be perception, whether it be practical, because Dan, the very essence of our democracy and its consistency, its stability of the country and of our democracy hinges upon people trusting the process.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball. I'm not asking you to look into that. I know you can't even guess. You're a numbers guy. But if you were the chairperson of the IEC, or if you were the CEO of the IEC, you know, between Mr. Glenn Mashinini and then Mr. Sai Mamapulo, when you stand up at 6 o'clock and you're talking to South Africans, surely that issue should be top of mind. Because even in the media briefings at the Results Operations Center, our own reporters at eNCA were asking the questions, what about these devices? What are you going to do? Political parties that we're interviewing leading up to this were saying, we are watching whether or not the outcome will be impacted or affected materially by these devices in terms of the problems they cause for us. And some of them, they say they've got a list of the voting stations where the headaches were experienced.
I think a good way, I don't know whether it's the correct way, but a good way for the IEC to go about this is to, in very short shrift, just admit the problem and say they will study it and ask people to make inputs so that it is a process. They're not going to solve that problem tonight, but to try and deny it, as they have been, is no way to deal with the problem.
Okay, what other stuff could we look at to now in terms of this credibility of the process? Because if you've been declining from a 90% rating of, we trust the IEC to like 60-something now, and you've got this situation now with the devices, what else could we be looking to say these guys are really shoring up our democratic process properly?
I think our democratic process is strong enough to withstand even the problems that the IEC is facing.
What makes you say that?
The fact that there is no major political party at all who is doubting the free and fair conduct of this election. That speaks to the maturity of our political parties and perhaps very much to the maturity of our governing party, because they are the big losers here. And they have not blamed the process, as far as I can recall, often, or perhaps, they haven't blamed it on the process, and they so easily could have. So same goes for the EFF, same goes for the IFP, same goes for the DA, same goes for the Freedom Front. All the big parties have trust in the process. They're putting the country first.
So these machines, these devices, are they the only blip, so to speak, on the IEC's credibility score?
I think the IEC generally did quite well. You know, one tends to focus on voting day at the problems that are experienced. And
in the polling stations, yes.
It's the same thing, Bradan, as if you go to the shopping centre and your car is stolen. That is your perception. But the 3,000 cars that were stolen is no news to you.
That were not stolen.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, there I have to agree with DA leader Steenhuisen that it is the job of the IEC to conduct these elections well, and they have an excellent track record, which at the moment they are slowly spoiling. And I think that the prayer of all of us who love our democracy and our country is that the IEC please not try to go into defensive mode. Get everybody on board and solve a problem which surely does exist, and not to the pleasure of anyone.
Yeah, I was looking at how some political parties introduce a lot of young candidate councillors on their books. Actually, a few weeks ago, I interviewed 3 of them from different parties, ANC, Good, and the DA from different parts of the country. So as young people, it's good to see, because the future belongs to you. But then when I look at the 10 of people who go and register and stuff, where does the IEC's responsibility start and end? In your view, should we say the reason that young people did not vote, maybe the awareness campaigns by the IEC were not attractive enough or sexy enough or whatever for the young people, or it's got nothing to do with the IEC?
Well, I think it has very little to do with the IEC, quite frankly. I mean, IEC offices across the country, and there's one in every municipality, are actually open every day for registration.
So anybody can just
Well,
walk
quite
in
frankly,
weekend,
people
yes.
should take a bit of personal responsibility in that regard. Nobody can be forced to vote. It's a holiday. What more can you do? If this were Australia, Belgium or a few other countries, those people would be breaking the law because voting in those countries are compulsory. While we give people the choice to vote or not, that choice must be respected.
Now, Yanni, you've seen a lot of elections before. You've been at the Results Operation Centre on a night like today.
Yes.
Our colleagues are going to be there as we build up to 6 o'clock. I mean, the IEC will announce the results. And in terms of local government elections, the process is Musuthu Miepa, who's a commissioner and he's a former CEO of the IEC, explaining the differences of approach of a local government elections, proclamation of the results, and of national and provincial elections. So we will get an outcome this evening by
Yes.
the IEC.
Yes, and actually, Dan, that's quite an important point on another matter, which is we will get an outcome, but now we mustn't misinterpret that outcome statistically.
Meaning?
Meaning, and I think that's what Mr. Moepia, who is the most hands-on person on elections in this whole country and a splendid fellow, I think that's what he sort of meant, is that you are having 257 elections which are not very related to each other at the same time. And this is where the lie comes when you try to draw a comparison between 2019 result and the 2021 result. The difference between a national and provincial election on the one hand and a municipal election on the other is that in a national election, and this is what he's referring to, we each get 2 ballots and every voter has the same power. But in a municipal election, in a metro, you get 2 ballots, and outside the metro, you get 3. This means that to go on a national percentage, it's very instructive to see a general trend, but you cannot compare the two statistically because they don't run from the same basis. Every rural vote is counted 1.5 times as much as every urban vote. It's a bit of a difficult thing to explain, but it's not that hard. And therefore, compare 2016 to 2021, not 2019. Apples to apples, pears to pears.
Finally, the pandemic, I mean, from what you've seen from the trends, in terms of helping us to do the right comparisons, would be a big factor.
Massive
because
factor.
We never had one before.
No, absolutely. You know, and it is so that people were worried, and especially because we have so many anti-vaxxers and people who are lazy to get vaccinated, they have everything to fear. So I think that played a massive role in the turnout, as it does around the world. All turnouts are impacted on it, unless there's a real black swan election, a completely unusual election like the Zambian one, where you had overturning of a governing party by a massive youth turnout. That's unusual. But in a normal democracy such as ours is so beautifully becoming.
Yeah. So when we listen, as we conclude, thanks, Yanni and
Sure,
Joubert. When we listen this evening at 6 o'clock to the IEC, we need to listen for a lack of defensiveness, because the less defensive they are about some of the issues like the devices, the better for us and restoring our trust in the process, in the system for our democracy.
I think so.
Thank you very much. Joubert, some of his insights as we build up to 6 o'clock here on eNCA. The country is waiting for the final results that are set to be announced after 6 o'clock by the IEC from its National Results Operating Centre. We understand, of course, that many political leaders, including the president of the governing party, Matamela Ramaphosa, will be attending.